boring topic. I know it's not like, right? But I hope I can make it interesting, and I hope you'll enjoy this talk. So, oops, got a mic there. So my name is Christopher Edwards. I'm a computer scientist at Adobe, and I'm going to talk to you about our project Hubble. So as just an overview, Hubble is a modular open source security and compliance auditing toolkit built on SaltStack. This is just the, Now, I want you to think of Hubble in the same way you think of the Hubble Space Telescope, okay? Think about it. Well, yeah, the Hubble Space Telescope is the greatest scientific and engineering achievement of modern man. Just like this. Just kidding, okay. The Hubble Space Telescope takes snapshots of evolving complex structures in an ever-expanding universe, right? Does that still sound a little too big? Is it really that much different, though, than the complex evolving infrastructures that we work in all the time, right? I think it's safe to say that we observe the digital universe to be expanding at an exponential rate, just like the physical universe. And I think, just like Edwin Hubble showed us that there's way more to our universe than we ever imagined, I think this tool can show you things about your digital universe that you've never seen before. So with that, let me give you a little bit of background. Like Rich talked about earlier in the keynote, we have a lot of acquisitions, and it's a lot of different stacks and all kinds of stuff all over the place. You probably noticed we have a lot of Adobe people at the conference. This is based on Adobe acquiring Omniture in 2009, which was a Utah company, and now a lot of the Experience Cloud comes out of that office and those people. Now, there's been a lot more acquisitions since then, and while this has been really good for the company, it also presents its own set of problems. We have different kind of tools all over the place. So, as you might imagine, with that kind of diversity, there's also a lot of duplicated work. If we have 15 acquisitions, that's 15 DNS stacks and 15 SMTP services and 15 all kinds of stuff, right? It's duplicated work. So we needed to make sure that we were going to standardize and we could kind of just unify all of that and consolidate it. So we started a team, and the idea was basically, let's take all those duplicated services and build them and just make them super robust, and everyone can use them. So we don't have to duplicate the effort. What we can do is build a DNS system and an NTP and SMTP and all the stuff you take for granted all the time, right? We'll do the boring stuff. You make money, okay? Now, Rich has teased me that CST, my team, is not great at marketing. So I want to earn an A in this class finally. So I'm proposing a slogan, boring. It's what we do. Okay? We will do the boring stuff, and you guys make the money. And I'm fine with that. And, I think it worked. This was the stock the other day. It went up a bunch, and then went up a bunch more yesterday. I think it worked. And you should come work with us, because it worked. So here's the problem. So the team I work on, we design and build and operate those foundational services to the whole Experience Cloud. All of those products, there's so many pieces to it. We run the base, right? Now, I consider myself a good operations person. I feel kind of an ownership of my systems, right? This is my house. I set it up. I know what is where, and I know how things are connected and how things work. And I can just get on and look at a system and just, I don't know about you guys, sometimes you can just feel like if it's healthy or not, right? You get to know them, right? Well, a couple years ago, I became familiar with some of the security stuff happening at Adobe by way of finding one of their tools in my house. So I was running this, and it's my ass if they don't work, right? And they just put some more stuff in there and didn't talk to me about it. But seriously, to be fair, the cloud asked for it. The cloud started it. So basically, this is me. Why are you guys messing around with my stuff? And right? So it's kind of like that, right? You have things set up the way you want, and someone messed with it. I wasn't having it. So I had questions. What was this new process that was now in my house? What was it doing? How was it gathering data? What data was it gathering? As far as I'm concerned, proprietary security black box software is malware. I don't know what it's doing. But it was there, and it was watching. But I didn't know what it was watching, and who was it telling, and how was it doing it. I don't know. So more questions just brought more disturbing answers. Just make a long story short and say that the cloud was involved. But guys, there's no cloud. It's just someone else's computer. Now, in my mind, that meant that all of our security data, basically all of our dirty laundry, was being trusted to the cloud. Now, to me, that sounds like a really awesome idea if you're Mr. Robot. Because if I hacked the company that gathers all the security flaws of other companies, now I know how to get in everywhere. So I just thought maybe we could just keep it where we can keep an eye on it. So again, basically, there was something in my house, a stranger that I didn't know, in my domain, and I wanted to know more. Strangers in the house. This message brought to you by Airbnb, when you just want strangers in your house. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever been asked in like a technical interview, it's kind of a silly question, but imagine you are on a deserted island and you have a computer, of course, and there's satellite internet from Elon Musk or something, but you can only pick 5 binaries. What would you take with you, right? It's kind of silly, but it lets you know like what is in people's toolboxes, right? What do they reach for? In an interview with an operations guy, what tools does he use? What's in his toolbox? So, excuse me. So basically, sorry. Now, when I think of this question for myself, I think SaltStack is in my toolbox. Like Tom talked about, Salt does a little bit of everything, right? It's great at a lot of stuff, but basically when I reach into my toolbox, it's just some different component of Salt, because Salt does a little bit of everything. There's a couple key things that it abstracts for us, and it gives us a couple of building blocks. It is a stack, after all. We have a standard set of execution modules that programmatically interact with nearly all aspects of a system, or a device, or whatever, right? We've abstracted that layer. We have real-time event listeners, and we have a flexible suite of reporting modules. So this seems like a little list of tools to me. Now think of Salt, again, like it's the ultimate Swiss Army knife. It has everything, okay? It has support for execution modules and returners and beacons and engines and every other, right? It can do a lot of things. Support for every distribution you could think of. Side note, I'm the Salt package maintainer for FreeBSD, if you use Salt on FreeBSD, I would love to hear from you. Okay, back to the story. So Salt does a little bit of everything, and it turns out, if you think about it, security and compliance is just a subset of everything, so why can't I do this with Salt? So here's where it gets a little more interesting. Hubble has 4 main components, and they all have funny names. You guys really think I wouldn't come up with names like Tom did? Pillar and, come on, right? So the first piece is Nova. This is profile-based auditing. Pulsar, real-time file integrity monitoring. Nebula does deep introspection about a system using OSQuery. That's a Facebook open source project. And Quasar is the reporting engine. So let me go into each of these a little bit more detail. Nova does the auditing. Nova basically is just a list of basic execution modules that could be used to gather certain types of data. So we have this list of custom audit modules, and you can check just about everything you could think of with one of these. I need to make sure our SSH config is right. I'll do that with the grep module. I just look in the config and check for settings. Or let's make sure certain packages are not installed or not running. Or kernel values. We even added a CVE scanner. That was not originally on the list from the security team, but I thought, come on, guys. And actually, if I could take one more step back into my FreeBSD boots, FreeBSD has CVE scanning built in. In the package manager, which yes, BSD has a package manager, I can just run package audit, and it will tell me if any of my packages are vulnerable to any known CVEs. It's not that hard. So, get it together, Linux. I'm calling you out. I want somebody to build that, okay? It's not that hard. All right. The next piece is I think I mixed the order of some of these, but it doesn't matter. The next piece is OSQuery. This is, again, focusing mainly on the tool that Facebook open sourced that allows you to query any aspect of your system just like it was an SQL database. So I want to know how, select star from logged in users, whatever, or just everything you can think of. Now, this is from their website. So whether your goal is intrusion detection, infrastructure reliability, or compliance, OSQuery gives you the ability to empower and inform a broad set of organizations in your company. Now, that's basically just marketing speak for our security analysts love this stuff. They spend all day looking at this stuff because they've created all kinds of correlations, and they can query for running processes and network connections outbound, and anything they want to know about what the system is doing, they can just query for. Now, the problem, and this has come up as feedback to previous talks, I would love to show you the cool, awesome dashboards and everything that they've come up with using this stuff, but I don't think we can afford to hire everybody, and I can't kill everybody, so I should just better not share it with you, because it's our security data, right? It's our dirty laundry. It's confidential, it's private. I can't show you those dashboards, but I promise they're very beautiful, and there's so much stuff in there. All right, the next piece is Pulsar. Pulsar is the event system. So currently, Pulsar focuses just on file integrity monitoring, which is boiled down to just watch for file system events. So, but it could also be expanded really easily to do any other type of events, like login events. If somebody logs into a system, I want a notification in Slack. Or if I want to do shell events. If somebody runs a certain command, or if somebody's running commands, I want to know what those are. I know there's a lot of motivation to do configuration management, CI/CD, and the whole like we put it out there and then nobody touches it. That's the idea, right? Nobody touches it. But with this, we could add the feature of login notifications, and then for those guys who are touching it, we know about. We actually use this feature. One of the SREs I know enabled it for his engineering team. So whenever they got in and tried to mess with stuff that he didn't want them to mess with, he would get a Slack notification, and then he would call them and say, "Get off of my machine." Okay? Now, again, Pulsar currently just focuses on file integrity monitoring. So basically, it watches for create, modify, or delete file system events. If a file is created, modified, or deleted while Hubble is watching, you'll know about it. And we gather all kinds of metadata about that event. So we can take that data and then store it and look back, and we can see the timeline of the evolution of that machine, and we can see this file or this config was changed on this day by this person at this time, and we have just a nice record of the compliance and the settings. We can go back and check what something was. So this is also a really fun piece. Now the fourth piece, the Quasar piece, this is basically just Salt returners. We use the returners and return the data to where we want it to go. Initially, we focused on Splunk because Adobe paid a lot of money for Splunk, and so we're going to use it, damn it. So we have support for these. We also have support for people who don't have as much money as Adobe, maybe. So we have support for Elasticsearch. You could set up your own, do it this way if you want, that's fine. Now, well, I will give you a disclaimer really quick. The Slack connector is nice for like testing or giving a demonstration, but don't just leave it on. You're just going to be bombarded with file system changes all day. It's not the best way to consume it, but it's a good way to demonstrate it. So again, Splunk and Elk allow us to do kind of like a time series. We can just go back and compare everything at certain times. We've had ideas proposed to just integrate also with like Zabbix or Nagios or something. And weird idea, maybe actually alert on security and compliance failures just like we would alert on a down server or when Apache falls over, right? It seems to me like we should also be watching those things because, right? Nobody wants to be the next Equifax. And apparently our CISO very much does not want us to be the next Equifax. So let me tell you a little bit more about a couple of these components. When I say that Nova is a profile-driven auditing system, the profiles are basically, here's your instructions on how to run all these checks. We have a set of modules that we've defined. These profiles are just the instructions for those modules. It's basically which module do I use and all of its arguments kind of is in these profiles. They're kind of ugly, but I think it's the best we can do to have a standardized, mostly human-readable language that operations and security and compliance can maybe speak the same thing. I think even non-technical people could understand one of these profiles and edit them, make little tweaks to customize it for whatever your security policy is. A couple of examples of these. I don't know how well you can see those, but it's just basically, I want you to do this check. Look in this file. I want you to look for this pattern, and here's the output I hope that you find. And if you find that, then I pass. And if you don't, then I fail. It's just a Boolean kind of thing, right? So let's check a bunch of SSH things. We'll check for kernel settings. It's just simple definitions of here's the thing to query, and this is what I want, and do I pass or fail? It's, it's not super complicated. That's kind of by design. Now we have 25 profiles in the open source repo. everything from CentOS to Ubuntu and CoreOS and Windows, and we've got coverage for a lot of stuff. If we don't have coverage for something that you have, please come talk to us. We would love to help you build one of these for that platform and expand out the number of platforms that we can support. Now, at this point, we have this little list of modules, and we have kind of instructions that these modules will read. But I had, in my initial trials of putting this together, I had a bit of a problem. So use this as an example. When the way that Salt is designed, when you run package.install, right? I think this is probably familiar for everybody. I went to install a package. It loads the package execution module, and then it executes the install function in that module. It's not super complicated. What I wanted to do was kind of nest it one more, like Hubble.nova.audit module or something, like so I could have a module that would load my new modules, but I didn't really know how to do that. So enter Colton. If you know Colton, give him a hug or something. He's done a great job. If you don't know Colton, read his book. It's really good. Colton was a core engineer at Salt that I poached. I mean, hired. No. The word we've settled on is repurposed. So I repurposed Colton without necessarily asking Tom. And his job was to help me build this. Because I'll admit it, I don't have a long software engineering background. I can do enough Python to prove that this could technically work, but I'm not a developer like he is. So we hired him, and he and I designed all of this and put it together, and he wrote all of the code part. Most of the code part. The important parts of the code, Colton did. So now, I just want to say he was like the perfect man for the job. The only regret I have is I never got the referral bonus because I also had to interview him to make sure he was perfect for the job, but that means, anyway. So I was a little nervous about maybe how Tom would react. I've known Tom for like a decade now, and we've worked together off and on. I don't have barbecues at his house on the weekend, but professionally we go back quite a ways. So I'm happy to say that Tom and I are still on speaking terms. Tom's a smart guy, and I think he realized that what we were building was useful, and yeah, so we're still good. So the initial version of Hubble was literally built on SaltStack. Like, the Hubble module was a custom execution module that just loaded other modules. The iNotify beacon was used for the Pulsar piece to look for iNotify events and watch that kind of stuff. We put configs in the minion D and the pillar, and we used the stock Splunk returner to send the data there. Literally built in the framework of SaltStack. Now, in the latest version, we use it a little bit differently. We just kind of use SaltStack as a library. So I've heard, as I've been here the last couple of days, there's some rumors about, I heard that Hubble's not going to use Salt anymore or something. So I'm going to put any rumors down. The word that we want to use, I think, is standalone, right? Not saltless or more salty or less salty or something. It's just a standalone piece, okay? We still very much depend on Salt. We're just basically doing an import Salt, and then we have all the functionality of Salt just right at our fingertips, and we can check for anything Salt can do. So I think there's some wins here. So again, you're still, if you're using the standalone Hubble, you are still very much using Salt underneath, but it doesn't have to be connected to a master or a minion or be part of the traditional Salt setup. You can just install an RPM. You tweak the config a little bit, basically tell it where is your Splunk or where is your elk, and you turn it on, and then you're done. You don't have to sign keys or do whatever. So I think there's a couple wins here. We have security, transparency. The operations people can see what the queries are going to be run on their systems and when are they going to be run and how are the audits happening and where are they sending the data. All of the stuff that I want to know as the owner of this house, now it's not a stranger in my house, it's something I understand. It's Salt. I know Salt. Yeah, we're buds. It's framework native, so, right, if we have the shared common platform of SaltStack, then adoption really shouldn't be a big deal. And it's super, super, super extendable. Not expendable, that's not the right one. If Salt can do it, Hubble can do it. Do you want to do audits of like your switches and routers and stuff? Salt has napalm libraries for interacting with switches and network devices. Let's just do a tie-in with Hubble for that. If Salt can do it, Hubble can do it. Now, I want to share a little background history, a couple more little quick stories, and then I'll be done. I've been looking for this next picture for a long time, and I finally found it on Wednesday night at the party, talking to people. But this is the first SaltStack booth ever. This is at the Southern California Linux Expo in LA in 2012. Some of you probably have never even seen that logo. That's not even the same logo now, right? This is a couple revisions back even. We got the booth as an open source project. I don't think Salt was a company at the time. But there's the small little first group of us. So Tom, of course, he's the brains of the operation. And then Seth is in the back. Is Seth here? Probably not. Seth has long time been great for Salt. And then there's me when there was a little less of me. And it was like 5.5 years ago, and yeah. And then Jeff Schroeder. I don't know if any of you guys know Jeff Schroeder. He's a big contributor, maintainer now in the Graphite project. So if you ever see him or talk to him, maybe on IRC, tell him that Krister says hi, and he will gladly tell you the story about how I got drunk at his house and threw up. And then we have Trevor. Trevor's here. Trevor's always willing to help. He's always been behind the scenes with this too. And then Corey Quinn. If you guys have not seen Corey Quinn speak, you should see him speak. He's very good at it. Very entertaining talks. And I hear he's really good at making AWS bills less scary. So find him and he'll help you with that. Now, so for this, a little background with this again. Tom, Seth, and I all carpooled down for this trip. I think this is before I started at Adobe. I think I was between jobs, and I had recently had a divorce. It's a whole thing. And so I carpooled with them, and I think the best I could do was like, I can help you guys with gas money, but I'd love to come with you, right? And we ran the booth together, the first booth. We made little memes and handed them all out, think like Hypnotoad, and it says use SaltStack or something, right? We repurposed as many memes as we could come up with and made them salt-related and handed them out and left them on tables and whatever, just trying to promote SaltStack, this new idea. So we did all of that, and then the next day when the conference was over, we packed all up, put everything back in the car, and drove the 12 hours back to Salt Lake. Now, I have pretty good memories of driving all night long through the middle of the desert. There's just nothing, and just stars, right? forever, and just trading shifts with Tom in the car, keeping each other awake, talking about what Salt might do someday. It had so much potential. What could it do? We were just dreaming all night and just talking about what could it do, right? Now, I don't know if I want to say Hubble was born that night under the stars, but maybe that's a nice story. So just one more last thing before I take some questions or we go into some more details. One more little thing. For those of you that have like a significant other, or you have boyfriend, girlfriend, you've been in a relationship, right? Sometimes one of you or the other has to vent. And the question is always, do I need to fix this or do I need to just listen, right? I think a lot of times we do the wrong one. It's, right? You guys, you know what I'm talking about. Well, Hubble is the direct result of me fixing something for my wife, okay? She is the inspiration for this whole damn thing, okay? The muse. So basically, my wife also works in IT, but she works in IT compliance. The super exciting, there must be something in the water, right? Compliance is boring too. Anyway, she works in IT compliance, and it's her job to prove annually that the company is compliant to industry regulations and compliance standards and whatever, right? So we've been together for about 5 years, and every one of those years she has had to do an audit at a different company that she's been with throughout that time. And these audits are always a huge pain in the butt. They take like 3 months. She works late. She's tired and grouchy. And she's spending all this time, I come to learn, basically emailing and trying to contact all the operations people and get, of all things, screenshots of like an SSH config to prove that it's compliant. Guys, we can do better than this. It doesn't have to be this hard, okay? Basically, instead of spending 3 months and doing a mad scramble and trying to grab everything and gather all this proof, why don't we just gather it all the time, just like we would do with metrics or monitoring or whatever, and then when the auditors come, my wife can just click print on a Splunk report and give it to them, and then she can come out and hang out with me, right? This, honestly, is 100% so my wife can hang out more with me because I love her and she's my favorite person. So, basically, to wrap up, I think that Hubble can provide a common language using the SALT framework where operations and security and compliance, right, compliance kind of defines the rules to some extent, and then security needs to enforce those and make sure that they stay in place, and operations needs to actually apply them and maintain them and own that, right? This provides a standard language that everybody can speak. They can write down what the rules are in a way that's native to our framework that we understand and we're comfortable with. So they will stop putting strangers in our houses. Okay? So, we'll take some questions, but basically, I really hope that Hubble can just bridge that divide and just make this all easier. It doesn't have to be that hard. Yeah, also, we're hiring. So, any questions? Yes.
So I've got to ask. So there was initially a concern with taking your security data, your dirty laundry, and giving it to the cloud, and then you integrated vulnera.com for your vulnerability. Did you not look at OpenVulnera, or was there something else?
Okay, so the question is, Vulnera is like a cloud security service where you send your data there. So that's kind of along those same lines of putting our stuff in the cloud, right? So the initial CVE module, there's actually been like 3 versions. The first version used OpenSCAP that you guys might have used before, but I moved away from that because it requires the OpenSCAP binary, which is the only thing that I could find that can ingest the XML that drives the OpenSCAP binary, and that's 2 other things to distribute, and it was just, there's got to be a better way. So the second generation of it was, we would query Vulner's API, but we would just download the database locally and serve that with Salt and just query internally for that, from that database. So that's also an option. That's the kind of second gen version of the CVE scanner. The third gen version just uses the Vulner's API. It sends them a list of your packages and they tell you which ones are bad. So there are 3 options. It's flexible.
They weren't a big fan of us hitting their servers and downloading their entire database 40,000 times.
Yeah, we've had some talks with them about, guys. Yeah. Any other questions? Another one, yeah.
I noticed that you did a lot of stuff with files, but did you all ever look at doing stuff with like isolated file permissions for actual access privileges to file systems, not just the file modifications themselves?
Yeah, so the Nova component has a stat module, which verifies file ownerships and permissions.
Okay.
So you can give it a file directory, whatever, make sure it's owned by these people in this group and these permissions and whatever. You can define that in Audit for that.
And I notify costs an event on version changes as well, so it's a modifier. So.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
So I think I missed this, but you said you switched from a remote execution module to including everything yourself. How do you run this across a menu? I'm missing this.
Okay. So again, there's kind of 2 versions of Hubble. There's the salty version that is just built into a Salt infrastructure. These custom modules, you drop in a directory and they're served out from your master. You do a, sync all, whatever, and it sends them out. And then you serve the instructions from getfs or whatever, and right? The standalone version is you install the RPM and it brings everything. It brings Salt with it. And then we do an import Salt and just use that library. So you can just run, there's a Hubble command, and then you can run test.ping or whatever if you want. It doesn't tie into Hubble, but you have full access to everything Salt has in there. But basically, we define all the instructions in the profiles. We predefine all the queries. And then we have the systems just on a schedule execute those queries and execute those audits and report the data back.
Can I
Yeah.
slightly? So I just wrote a really lightweight daemon because we have a lot of teams that don't have Salt because of all the acquisitions, right? And we just found that we couldn't rely on other teams' Salt infrastructures to be as stable as ours. If they control their Salt, then if their Salt has problems, we don't get our data. So we wrote this standalone thing. It's just a really simple, single-threaded, single pass-through scheduler that basically, instantiates the Salt loader, gets all the modules, and runs simple stuff. So, and then we package that up with PyInstaller so that, we don't have to rely on their Python, it's all a big.
Right. It's a whole thing.
And we just put it in RPM, and the only dependency for that RPM is Git. And it has PyGit2 in there for GetFS, and it has OSQuery in there, and it has, and so
Right.
we install the Salt on RPM. So we install that RPM and run the service.
Yeah. So even with the standalone version, you can manage it with Salt. We could, well, I guess you could just use command.run, or we could write a Hubble execution module that runs Hubble stuff underneath. I don't know. But you can, yeah. Anyway, yeah, one more.
On the vulnerability scanner, every time you query for a vulnerability, are you hitting Vulner's API, or do you actually cache the data for some period of time?
Again, it depends on which of the 3 kind of iterations you use. If you use the middle one, where we download the database from them, that could be just on a schedule. You download it once a day, and then you just use that. But in the, I'm going to give Vulners a list of my packages, and they're going to tell me, I don't think that's cached. I think that's just, right? So there are ways to cache it or different ways to do it. It just depends on which one you use.
Looking at the install box,
Yeah, my bad. The documentation is a little old.
So I'm going to make a whole bunch of excuses right here.
Right.
So this was originally a proof of concept. Can we do this with Hubble? And then all of a sudden, it was working really well. And all of a sudden, our contract with the company that was doing the stuff for us before was about to renew at a much higher price. We were running out of promotional contract. And so this became a really big thing really quickly.
Yeah.
It went from we're going to do a proof of concept to this needs to be everywhere at Adobe within about 6 months. And so we cut corners. We're working on remediating that now. We're working on getting more tests in there. We're working on improving the documentation. So yeah.
But that's a good tie-in. We have 3 positions to work on Hubble at Adobe. Please come work with us and help fix that stuff.
To clarify, they are contract positions, but we're hoping that we can eventually move those into full-time engineers as well. Contractors are easier to hire than full-time engineers right now. So.
Anyway, okay, one more.
So what's the best way to get started implementing this in an organization? Is there, you know, a book to rely on?
I knew that was going to happen one of these days. Can I have time to write a book? Yeah, I'm looking at you.
I'm not your boss, so. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, that works. No, we have the kind of old docs, but we have like a Slack team. You can join in and ask us all the questions you want and help us fix the docs.
And for now, so our written docs are the ones that are particularly out of date. If you go to the actual repos and look at the readmes, those are fairly up to date.
Yes.
They'll give you a good start. I'm working on the actual code documentation for people who want to develop. And we're on Slack, we're on everywhere, so just come talk to us. And love your help.
Oh,
I can actually answer that. I'm actually building an auto deployer with Juju right now that's going to automatically deploy Hubble for you called Space Shuttle.
all right. All right, yeah. Could this conference be any more Hubble themed? Like, it's space everywhere, right? Anyhow, that's all I have. I think that's all the time we have. So thanks for coming, and I'd love to talk to you after.